The story of Evelyn Thorne, the betrayal of simplicity. Before we dive into the most shocking corporate takedown you'll ever hear, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next epic story of power and revenge. Now, let's begin. The $1 Million Mistake. The crystal chandelier in the grand ballroom of the Manhattan Plaza Hotel poured light like frozen tears onto the city's most influential figures. It was the annual gala for the Children's Health Foundation, an event of champagne smiles and silent multi-million-dollar handshakes. But for one woman, semi-hidden behind a marble column, the light felt like a floodlight in an interrogation room. She clutched her slightly swollen belly through the simple fabric of her dress, her heart hammering a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She was only there to surprise her husband. But the surprise she was about to unearth was entirely her own, because across the dazzling room, her beloved husband, Marcus Kent, had his arm draped possessively around another woman, his laugh echoing in a way that would shatter her world forever. He thought his pregnant wife was safely home, resting with a migraine. He had no idea she was standing right there, listening to every syllable of his betrayal. Nor did he have a clue that his simple, unassuming wife was Evelyn Thorne, the phantom CEO of Starlight Global Technologies, a woman who owned half the city, including the very floor he was standing on. His transgression wasn't just an affair, it was a declaration of war he had just unwittingly launched. Evelyn felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ballroom's aggressive air conditioning, the facade of a simple life. For the past 2 years, Evelyn had meticulously curated a life of simplicity. When she first met Marcus, she was utterly exhausted by a world where her net worth walked into the room before she did. Men saw Evelyn Thorne, the tech prodigy, the ruthless negotiator, the billionaire CEO who had grown Starlight Global from a garage startup into a global titan. They didn't see her. So, she had taken a sabbatical, completely obscured her identity, and introduced herself as Eve, a freelance graphic designer working from home. She wore simple clothes, drove a modest hybrid, and rented a charming, yet non-extravagant apartment in a pleasant Brooklyn neighborhood. It was there she met Marcus Kent, a handsome, ambitious project manager at a mid-level logistics firm called Velocity Dynamics. He was charming, attentive, and seemed to love her for who she was, not what she had. He made her feel normal. He made her feel seen. Their life was a quiet, domestic picture of bliss. She cooked his favorite meals, listened to his gripes about his idiot boss and his dead-end projects, and offered unwavering support. When she discovered she was pregnant, the joy felt like the perfect final piece of the life she had always craved. That evening, she was supposed to be in bed, overcome by a wave of morning sickness. But a late-day burst of energy hit her. Marcus had been so sweet, insisting she rest while he attended the gala for his company. "It's a boring networking event, honey," he'd told her, kissing her forehead. "I just have to show my face. I'd 1,000 times rather be here with you and our little peanut." Wanting to surprise him and see his face light up, she slipped into a simple, elegant navy maternity dress and drove to the hotel. She glided in, unrecognized by this dazzling crowd, and scanned the room for him, and then she saw it. He was near the champagne fountain, looking more dashing than ever in his tuxedo. But he wasn't alone. His arm was wrapped possessively around the waist of a woman in a bright, backless crimson dress. Evelyn instantly recognized her. Charlotte Hayes, a sharp junior analyst on his team, whom Marcus had mentioned as aggressively ambitious. Charlotte leaned into him, her red-nailed hand stroking his lapel. They looked like a power couple, a perfect match for the opulent setting. Evelyn held her breath. Maybe it's just networking, she told herself, her mind scrambling for a rational explanation. He's being polite. It's an office thing. But then Charlotte laughed, a sharp, tinkling sound, and tilted her head back. Marcus leaned in and kissed her. Not a polite peck, but a slow, lingering kiss. Thick with an intimacy that struck Evelyn like a physical blow. The world tilted on its axis. The murmur of the crowd faded to a dull roar in her ears. Immobile behind the column, she couldn't move. She could only watch and listen as a few of Marcus's colleagues joined them. "You two are brave being so public," laughed a man named Ben, nudging Marcus. Marcus smirked, a look of smug self-satisfaction on his face that Evelyn had never seen before. Why hide it? Life's too short to be stuck in a boring routine. He took a sip of his champagne. Besides, it's not like my wife would ever show up at a place like this. It's a little too sophisticated for her. A wave of nausea, far worse than any morning sickness, washed over Evelyn. Charlotte giggled and ran a hand up Marcus's arm. "Don't be mean, Alex. Eve is sweet, very domestic. She's probably home knitting booties or something." The group laughed. The sound was like shattering glass in Evelyn's ears. "Sweet and boring," Marcus corrected, his voice dripping with condescension. "Honestly, guys, it was a mistake from the start. I needed stability then, and she was available. But a man has needs. A man with my ambition needs a partner who can keep up. Someone with fire, like Char." He squeezed Charlotte's hip. "Plus, the pregnancy has made her so dull. All she talks about are doctor appointments and nursery colors. It's a total passion killer." "So what's the plan?" Ben asked. "Are you going to leave her?" Marcus shrugged, the picture of casual indifference. "After the baby is born, of course. I'm not a monster. I'll do the right thing. I'll set her up in a small apartment somewhere, pay some child support. She'll be fine. She's not exactly equipped for the real world, poor thing. But my future," he said, looking at Charlotte with adoration, "is with this one. She's my ticket to the top." The cruelty of his words was surgical. Every syllable was designed to diminish her, to reduce their 2 years of life and the child she carried to a boring routine, a temporary inconvenience he had to manage. He hadn't just cheated. He had erased her. He had belittled her. And he had maligned her, all while planning to discard her. Tears sprang to Evelyn's eyes, hot and stinging. But beneath the deep, soul-crushing hurt, something else was stirring. A cold, dormant part of her that she had locked away for 2 years began to awaken. It was the part of her that didn't cry, that didn't break. It was the part that analyzed, strategized, and executed. It was the part of her that was Evelyn Thorne. She saw him not as her husband, but as a hostile asset, a liability. He spoke of ambition, of his ticket to the top. He had no idea he was talking to the woman who owned the elevator. Without a sound, she backed away, melting into the shadows of the grand ballroom. She didn't flee. She retreated. Her exit was as quiet and unnoticed as her entrance. As she stepped out into the cool night air, the tears on her cheeks dried, replaced by an icy resolve. He wanted to discard her. He thought she was simple, unequipped for the real world. He was about to find out just how real her world could be. The game had begun, and Evelyn Thorne never, ever lost. Interaction point. If you were Evelyn, what would be the first thing you'd do when you got home? Would you rage or would you plot? Let me know your revenge strategy in the comments. The CEO awakens. The drive back to the apartment she had shared with Marcus was a blur of streetlights and numb disbelief. The charming 3-bedroom floor that had once felt like a cozy sanctuary now seemed like a film set, a flimsy facade for a life that was a complete lie. Every photo on the wall, of them smiling on a hike, of them kissing on New Year's Eve, was a testament to her naivete. She walked through the rooms, a ghost in her own home. She saw his clothes spilling from the laundry hamper, his favorite coffee mug by the sink, the book he was reading on the nightstand. The simplicity she had longed for had been used as a weapon against her. She stood in the middle of the living room, one hand over her stomach, the other clenched into a fist. The pain was a physical weight, threatening to crush her. Part of her wanted to collapse, to scream and sob until nothing was left. But the CEO inside her, the woman who had faced down hostile boards and corporate raiders, refused to let her break. That part of her whispered a cold, hard truth. Grief is a luxury you can't afford right now. Strategy is your survival. She walked into her home office, a small room Marcus had always referred to as her little hobby space. She sat down at the sleek, minimalist desk and opened her personal laptop, a device far more powerful and encrypted than Marcus could ever imagine. Her fingers flew over the keyboard, muscle memory taking over. With a few keystrokes, she bypassed her own company's firewalls, accessing her private executive dashboard. The screen glowed with the bright logo of Starlight Global Technologies, and for the first time in 2 years, Evelyn Thorne looked out at her empire. Real-time data streams, global asset valuations, project trajectories, and confidential communications flooded the screen. Seeing it all spread out before her was like taking a breath of pure oxygen after being submerged for too long. This was her. This was her power. Her first call was to the only person who knew the truth about her double life. "Thorne," she said, her voice steady and devoid of emotion. The calm, familiar voice of Ethan Bellwether, her chief operating officer and most trusted confidant, came back. "Evelyn, I'm surprised to see your secure line active. Is everything all right?" Ethan was a man in his late 50s, impeccably professional, who had been with her from the start. He had, respectfully, advised against her social experiment. "No, Ethan, nothing is all right," she said. "The experiment is over. It was a catastrophic failure." There was a pause on the line. Ethan was too discreet to say, "I told you so." But she could feel it. "What are your orders?" he asked simply. "I need you to do several things for me, with the utmost discretion. First, a complete financial report on Marcus Kent, not just his Velocity Dynamics salary. I want to know about any personal debt, credit lines, secret accounts, everything. I want to know where every penny he has is located." "Consider it done," Ethan replied without hesitation. "Second," Evelyn continued, her voice hardening, "the apartment on Willow Avenue. I believe the title is held by one of our real estate holding subsidiaries, correct? Robbinswood Properties." "That's correct. We acquired the building 4 years ago. You are the sole beneficiary." "Excellent. I want you to initiate an eviction process for the current tenants of Unit 7B. Use a standard reason. Owner wishes to reclaim the property for personal use. I want the notice served by a sheriff in exactly 72 hours. 72 hours. Understood. And the tenants are Marcus Kent and myself," she said, the words tasting like ash. "But I will have vacated by then." Ethan was silent for a moment. "Evelyn, what happened?" he asked, his professional tone softening with genuine concern. Evelyn closed her eyes. The image of Marcus kissing Charlotte Hayes flashed in her mind. "He's having an affair, Ethan. He flaunted it at the Plaza Gala tonight. He called me boring and simple. He planned to leave me after our child is born." She recounted the conversation she had overheard. Her voice was a monotone recitation of facts, stripping the words of their emotional power to keep from breaking. When she finished, the silence on the other end of the line was heavy. "The man is a fool," Ethan finally said, his voice laced with a cold fury she had only heard him use when a competitor tried to poach their lead engineers. "He is a fool of astronomical proportions. What else do you require?" "I am leaving tonight. I am coming back to the city. Have my penthouse at the Apex Tower prepared. Full security detail, but keep it discreet. No one is to know I am back in town. As of this moment, Eve stops existing. I am Evelyn Thorne again." The penthouse will be ready in 1 hour. Your driver will be waiting in the underground garage. One last thing, Ethan. I want you to start compiling a dossier on Velocity Dynamics. I want to know their financial weaknesses, their key contracts, their executive board pressure points. I want to know everything. I have a sudden interest in their market share. A slow smile could be heard in Ethan's voice. With pleasure, Ms. Thorne. Welcome back. The wife vanishes. After the call, Evelyn moved with silent efficiency. She packed a single bag with essentials, her laptop chargers, a few changes of comfortable clothing, and a small, framed sonogram from her nightstand. She looked at the small, grainy picture of the life growing inside her. This was no longer just about her own broken heart. This was about securing a future for her child, a future where they would be protected and where their father could never cause them harm or disappointment. She took one last look around the apartment. She left behind the clothes, the books, the furniture, the entire set of her failed life as Eve. She walked to the kitchen counter and slipped the wedding and engagement rings off her finger. They felt cold and foreign. She placed them deliberately in the center of the counter, a silent, gleaming statement. Then she walked out, closing the door softly behind her. She didn't look back. Eve was gone. Evelyn Thorne drove toward the heart of the city, not as a heartbroken wife fleeing, but as a queen returning to her throne to plot a war. We're only halfway through this incredible story of betrayal. If you're hooked, please hit the like button now to support the channel and share the video with a friend who loves a good revenge tale. The first strikes. Marcus Kent arrived home from the gala around 2 a.m., drunk on champagne and success. The night with Charlotte had been intoxicating. He felt like the king of the world. He tiptoed into the apartment, expecting to find Eve asleep. When he saw her side of the bed empty and perfectly made, he felt a brief flash of annoyance. She was probably sleeping in the guest room again. His late arrival must have disturbed her. So sensitive. So boring. He didn't even notice the missing suitcase from the closet or the empty spot in the medicine cabinet. He collapsed into bed and fell into a dreamless sleep. The next morning, he woke up with a pounding headache and sent Eve a perfunctory text. "Hey, rough night. Hope you're feeling better. Heading to the office. Love you." The lack of a response didn't register. She was probably busy. His first clue that something was wrong came at lunchtime. He tried to buy a ridiculously expensive sandwich for himself and Charlotte at a trendy deli, hoping to impress her. His corporate credit card was declined. He frowned, swiping it again. Declined. Frazzled, he pulled out his personal American Express. "Card has been suspended, sir," the cashier said with a bored expression. A flush of embarrassment crept up his neck as Charlotte watched with a raised eyebrow. He paid with his debit card, feeling his temper flare. He called the credit card company from his office. "I'm sorry, Mr. Kent," a polite but firm voice informed him. "The primary account holder has frozen the card and removed you as an authorized user." "The primary account holder? That's my wife," Marcus sputtered. "She can't do that without my permission." "Actually, sir, according to our records, Ms. Eve Thorne is the sole primary holder and is entirely within her rights to manage the account as she sees fit." Furious, Marcus tried calling Eve. The call went straight to voicemail. He tried again. Voicemail. He sent a flurry of angry texts. "What the hell is going on with the cards? Eve, you are trying to embarrass me. Call me now." They all remained undelivered. It was as if her phone had simply ceased to exist. Fuming through the rest of the day, his grand plans with Charlotte felt a little less glamorous when he couldn't even treat her to lunch properly. When he got home that evening, the apartment felt strangely empty and silent. He called her name. No answer. He saw the rings then, sitting on the granite countertop, catching the last rays of the evening sun. A cold panic heavier than any hangover settled in his stomach. This wasn't just about a credit card. She was gone. The panic mixed with indignation. How dare she? How dare this quiet, simple woman pull such a dramatic, disruptive stunt? He searched the apartment, finally noticing the missing clothes and toiletries. She had left. For the next 2 days, Marcus cycled through rage, confusion, and a strange sense of liberation. He told Charlotte that Eve had left him after a fight, playing the part of the aggrieved, misunderstood husband. Charlotte, seeing her path to becoming the new Mrs. Kent clearing, was perfectly sympathetic. Her presence was a balm to his bruised ego. The real bomb dropped on the 3rd day. Marcus was getting ready for work when a sharp, authoritative knock echoed through the apartment. He opened the door to find a severe-looking man in a suit, a sheriff, holding a clipboard. "Marcus Kent?" the man asked. "Yes, I'm here to serve you this notice." He handed Marcus a thick envelope. Marcus tore it open, his eyes scanning the dense legal text. The words leaped out at him. Notice of eviction. 30 days to vacate. Property of Robbinswood Properties. SA reclaimed for owner's use. He stared at the document, his mind refusing to process it. "This is impossible," he stammered. "We have a lease. I pay the rent." "According to our records," the sheriff said in a monotone. "The rent has been paid in full for the last 2 years, from an account belonging to Eve Thorne, an account that has now been closed. The property owner is exercising their right to terminate the tenancy at will. You have 30 days, sir. Good day." The sheriff turned and walked off, leaving Marcus standing in the doorway, the notice trembling in his hand. He stumbled inside, his world spinning. He always thought he paid the rent. The money came from their joint account, but his salary was the primary deposit. He had no idea the apartment itself wasn't just a rental, but owned by some faceless corporation. How did Eve find this place? He sank onto the couch, the pieces clicking into place with horrifying clarity. The suspended credit cards, the closed bank account, the eviction. This was no spontaneous emotional departure. This was calculated. It was methodical. This was retaliation. But why? The affair? How could she know if he'd been so careful? A sick feeling rose in his throat as he recalled the gala. Could she have been there? No, impossible. She was homesick, right? He tried to access their joint savings account online. Access denied. He checked the balance. It was 0. Drained. Every penny they had saved, or rather, every penny she had contributed from her freelance design work, was gone. He was left only with the modest amount in his personal checking account, enough to cover perhaps 1 month's expenses. The pressure was on. In the span of 72 hours, Marcus Kent had gone from a man on top of the world to a man with no credit, no savings, and a 30-day eviction notice. The comfortable life he'd taken for granted had been systematically dismantled, and he was left standing in the wreckage, utterly bewildered. The sweet, domestic, simple wife he had planned to discard had just shown him a side of her he never knew existed. And the terrifying part was, he had a feeling she was just getting started. The predator's strategy. From her penthouse suite overlooking the city, Evelyn Thorne operated with a surgeon's precision. The vast, sterile space, all glass and chrome, was a far cry from the cozy apartment she had shared with Marcus. It was her command center. A massive screen on one wall displayed stock quotes, encrypted communications, and the dossier on velocity dynamics, which grew thicker by the hour. Ethan Bellwether sat opposite her at a large glass table, looking grim. "The financial pressure is effective," he reported. "Kent is trying to open new credit lines, but his debt-to-income ratio without his assets is abysmal. He's being denied." "Good," Evelyn said, sipping chamomile tea. She had to be mindful of the baby. Her revenge would be cold and clean, driven by intellect, not volatile rage. What's the status of Velocity? It's exactly as we suspected, Ethan said, pointing to a flow chart on the screen. Over-leveraged and desperate for a major contract to appease their shareholders. Their entire Q4 projection hinges on securing the logistics contract for the new Project Apollo. Project Apollo was a massive, multi-billion-dollar international tech initiative, and the lead partner on the project was Starlight Global Technologies. Velocity Dynamics was just a small fish, hoping to feed on the crumbs. Evelyn's lips curved into a faint, predatory smile. And Marcus's role? He is the project manager for Velocity's bid, Ethan confirmed. According to our intelligence, he has cut significant corners on safety and insurance protocols to bring their offer in at a suicidally low price point. He's banking on us not looking too closely at the fine print. He's banking on me being simple, Evelyn murmured to herself. He is about to learn how closely I look at everything. The professional annihilation the following week was hell for Marcus. The pressure at work was immense. His boss, a perpetually stressed man named Bob, was breathing down his neck about the Apollo bid. Meanwhile, his personal life was in ruins. He and Charlotte were frantically searching for a new apartment, but with his finances frozen and her meager salary, their options were dismal and depressing. Their passionate affair was quickly souring under the weight of real-world stress. I just don't understand why you can't just fix this, Alex, Charlotte complained one afternoon, scrolling through bleak apartment listings on her phone. Why was everything in her name? It's like you have nothing. I thought we had this together. Her patience was worn thin. Marcus had managed to paint himself as the victim, and Charlotte, for now, was buying it. The day of the final bid presentation arrived. This was Marcus's chance to turn everything around. Winning the Apollo contract would make him a hero at Velocity. It meant a huge bonus, a promotion, enough to escape this financial nightmare and start his new life with Charlotte properly. He and his team sat in the sterile, intimidatingly large boardroom in Starlight's Apex Tower, a building so modern and powerful it made his own office feel like a relic. They were presenting to the Project Oversight Committee. Marcus had practiced his pitch for weeks. He was confident, fluid, and utterly unprepared for what was about to happen. The presentation went well. He laid out Velocity's proposal, highlighting their competitive pricing and aggressive timeline. The committee members listened with unreadable faces. When he finished, a quiet voice spoke from the head of the table. It was Ethan Bellwether, Starlight's COO. "Thank you, Mr. Kent," Ethan said, his eyes cold. "An ambitious proposal, to say the least. We do, however, have a few concerns." He gestured to a large screen, which lit up with excerpts from Marcus's own bid. On page 47, you outline your insurance coverage. Our risk assessment team has flagged this as woefully inadequate for a project of this scale. In fact, it barely meets the legal minimum requirement. Was this an oversight? Marcus felt a sharp sweat break out on his forehead. It's a preliminary figure designed to keep the initial bid competitive. We plan to renegotiate once the contract was awarded. So you submitted a fraudulent bid? Ethan stated, not as a question, but as a fact. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. I wouldn't call it fraudulent, Marcus began. Furthermore, Ethan continued, ignoring him and displaying another document. Your proposed supply chain relies on parts from a manufacturer that was recently cited for extensive labor violations, something a routine due diligence check would have revealed. Starlight has a zero-tolerance policy for such partnerships. Did you perform due diligence, Mr. Kent? Marcus's throat was dry. He had outsourced the due diligence to a junior analyst to save time. Charlotte. He shot a panicked look at her, but she was staring at her hands, avoiding his gaze. And finally, Ethan said, delivering the final blow. Your timeline. It is aggressive, because you have budgeted for only a single quality control check at the final stage of production. For Project Apollo, we require a minimum of 3 at every stage. Your proposal doesn't just cut corners, it cuts the legs out from under the table and expects no one to notice. Ethan Bellwether leaned forward. This bid is not just unprofessional, Mr. Kent. It is reckless and dangerously incompetent. It exposes this project to unacceptable levels of financial and ethical risk. Not only are we rejecting the Velocity bid, but we will be formally communicating our concerns about your team's professional standards to your CEO. The words hit Marcus like a freight train. He was humiliated, exposed. He looked at his team. They were staring at him with a mixture of shock and contempt. He had failed, and he had dragged them all down with him. The firing was swift and brutal. An hour after returning to Velocity's offices, Marcus was summoned to his boss's office. Bob, his face pale with fury, was on the phone with Starlight's legal department. "I understand," Bob was saying, his voice strained. "Yes, of course. We take this very seriously. Thank you." He hung up the phone and looked at Marcus. "Do you have any idea what you've done? You have not only cost us the biggest contract of the decade, but you've made this company a laughingstock. Starlight is threatening to blacklist us for all future tenders. Pack your desk. You're fired. And so is Hayes. I want both of you out of this building in 10 minutes. Marcus stood there speechless. In a single afternoon, his career, the one thing he had valued above all else, had been utterly annihilated. As he walked back to his desk in a daze, he met Charlotte's eye as he peered across the office. Her face was a mask of cold fury and terror. The ticket to the top he had promised them had just turned into a one-way ticket to the unemployment line. He didn't know how, but he knew with a sickening certainty that this was her doing. The simple, boring wife he had mocked was somehow behind it. She hadn't just taken his home and his money. She had reached into the heart of his professional life and crushed it with a terrifying, invisible force. The wreckage. Losing his job was the start of a freefall. The professional humiliation was absolute, but the practical fallout was even worse. With no income, Marcus was toxic. Velocity's severance was insultingly small, a clear message to leave quietly. The eviction date loomed, a clock counting down to homelessness. The relationship with Charlotte disintegrated almost immediately. The passion that had been fueled by secret dates and the thrill of the forbidden could not survive the harsh reality of failure and poverty. "This is all your fault, Alex," she screamed at him one evening in the half-packed, chaotic apartment. "You promised me a future. You said you were a man on the rise. You're nothing, Alex. You're a failure who got us both fired." "My fault," he yelled back, his voice hoarse with stress. "You were supposed to vet the suppliers for the Apollo bid. You were so busy planning what you'd buy with the bonus you didn't even do your job." Their arguments became a daily, vicious, circular ritual. The fire he had admired in her was now a raging inferno directed entirely at him. She saw him not as her partner, but as the anchor that had dragged her down. Within a week, she was gone. She packed her bags while he was out, desperately and fruitlessly, dropping off resumes. He came home to find a note on the kitchen counter next to where his wedding rings had sat. "I can't do this, Alex. I have to look out for myself. Goodbye." She had taken the little cash he had left in a drawer and vanished. He was truly alone. His world had shrunk to the 4 rapidly emptying walls of the apartment. His supposed friends, the colleagues and social acquaintances he had worked so hard to impress, suddenly stopped returning his calls. News of his spectacular screw-up at Starlight and his unceremonious firing had spread like wildfire. He was a pariah. Desperation began to set in. He swallowed his pride and called his parents, confessing a heavily edited version of his situation, a sudden corporate downsizing, a mutual separation with Eve. They offered sympathy and a small bridging loan, but the shame was a bitter pill to swallow. Meanwhile, Evelyn watched the unraveling from a distance. Ethan provided daily updates, concise and factual. Torres's co-conspirator has abandoned him. He is attempting to secure a personal loan, but has been unsuccessful. He has contacted a low-grade employment agency. Evelyn felt a grim satisfaction, but it wasn't joy. It was the cold, clean feeling of a problem being systematically solved. Her focus was shifting. Her pregnancy was progressing smoothly, and she was pouring her renewed energy into her company. She attended board meetings via secure video link, her face and identity still a closely guarded public secret. Her mind, sharpened by her personal crisis, was clearer than ever. She made a series of bold, brilliant decisions that sent Starlight's stock soaring. One evening, Ethan brought her a file. "There's one more loose end," he said, his tone serious. The gala. Inside the file were high-resolution photos. A private investigator had captured crisp images of Marcus and Charlotte that night, laughing, touching, kissing by the champagne fountain. There were also meticulously compiled social media posts from Charlotte's accounts, bragging about her new man and her incredible future, all posted while Marcus was still married. "A Financial Times Society columnist owes me a favor," Ethan said quietly. "She specializes in articles about the city's corporate elite, a story about a rising star's spectacular fall from grace, complete with a sordid affair with a subordinate and the betrayal of his pregnant wife. It's a story she would find irresistible." Evelyn looked at the photos, saw Marcus's smug face, and felt a flash of the old pain. But it was distant now, like an echo. This was no longer about hurting him. It was about controlling the narrative. It was about ensuring that when the time came, everyone would know the truth. Marcus hadn't just failed. He had been a villain. "Filter it," she said, her voice firm. "But frame the story carefully. The wife must be portrayed as a dignified private victim. No name, just the pregnant wife. I do not want my identity tied to this filth. I want him to be defined by his actions, not by who he did them to." "Understood," Ethan said. "It will be his professional and social obituary." The article dropped 2 days later. It was a masterpiece of character assassination, all presented as objective journalism. It detailed Marcus's reckless professional conduct and his ethically questionable relationship with Charlotte Hayes, painting a damning picture of a man whose ambition far outstripped his talent and morals. It mentioned his quiet, pregnant wife, whom he had so cruelly betrayed. The fallout was immediate. Any shred of professional reputation Marcus had left was incinerated. Any potential employer who Googled his name would now find this sordid tale on the first page of search results. He wasn't just unemployed. He was permanently unemployable. Marcus read the article on his phone, sitting on the floor of his now completely empty apartment. The movers had taken the last of the furniture that morning. He had nowhere to go. He felt a desperation so profound it was suffocating. The article was the final nail in his coffin. He finally understood. This was not a series of unfortunate events. This was a demolition. It was a planned, sophisticated, and utterly ruthless campaign against him. And it was all orchestrated by the woman he had dismissed as simple, sweet, and boring. He had profoundly, epically underestimated Eve. The question was no longer what he had done to her. The question was what he would do now, in his desperation. A single, foolish idea took root. He had to find her. He had to see her, to appeal to her. He had to remind her of the man she once loved, the father of her child. It was his only hope. He didn't know where she was, but he had to try. He believed with the last fragment of his deluded ego that he could still manipulate his way back into her good graces. He had to make her stop. The final showdown. Finding Eve was impossible. Her phone was disconnected, her email bounced, and she had no social media presence. She had vanished. Marcus, now living in a grim, weekly pay motel room, spent his days sending out feelers to anyone who had known them as a couple. His inquiries were met with silence. It was as if she had been erased from existence. His desperation led to a last gasp, desperate idea. Starlight. The name had been a constant in his downfall. They had rejected his bid. They had reported him to his CEO, and somehow he felt they were connected to the gossip column that ruined him. It was a long shot, but it was the only lead he had. He reasoned that Eve, with her freelance graphic design work, might have had some, however tenuous, connection to the city's tech world. He went to Starlight's apex tower, the gleaming monument to his failure. He had no plan, just a wild hope he could convince someone to find information. Dressed in his last clean suit, he approached the main reception desk. "I need to speak to someone in your hiring department," he said, trying to sound professional. "My name is Marcus Kent. It's regarding the Apollo project." The receptionist, a coolly efficient woman, typed his name into her system. A small red flag popped up on her screen, unseen by Marcus. "One moment, sir," she spoke softly into her earpiece. A few seconds later, she looked up at him. "Mr. Bellwether will see you. Please take the elevator to the 80th floor." Marcus was stunned. Mr. Bellwether? The COO? Why would the COO agree to see him? A flicker of hope ignited inside him. Maybe this was a chance to apologize, to plead his case, to somehow salvage his career. The elevator ride to the 80th floor was silent and swift. The doors opened directly into a vast minimalist reception area outside the executive suites. The air was thin, the silence deep. Ethan Bellwether was waiting for him. "Mr. Kent," Ethan said, his expression unreadable. "Thank you for coming. We have some final paperwork regarding the Velocity bid that requires your attention. Follow me." He led Marcus not to an office, but to a massive boardroom. The room was dominated by a colossal mahogany table and a floor-to-ceiling window that offered a god's-eye view of the entire city. The men and women already seated around the table were impeccably dressed and radiated an aura of immense power. These were the executive brass of Starlight Global Technologies. Marcus felt his stomach clench with anxiety. This wasn't about paperwork. This was an execution. "Please take a seat," Ethan said, gesturing to a single empty chair at the end of the table, directly opposite the head. Marcus sat down, his hands sweating. He felt like a prisoner in the dock. The executives watched him, their faces a mix of curiosity and disdain. "As you know," Ethan began, standing at the head of the table, "Starlight was profoundly disappointed by your team's professional conduct at Velocity. Your actions constituted a severe breach of trust and ethics. Before we close this matter, our board had a few final questions." Marcus swallowed hard, trying to form a coherent sentence, but his mind was blank with terror. Just then, the main doors to the boardroom hissed softly open. A woman walked in. She was dressed in a tailored, dark gray power suit that accentuated her confident posture and her now very prominent baby bump. Her hair was pulled back in a sleek, neat bun. Her face was the same, yet completely different. The soft, gentle features he knew were now imbued with an unshakable confidence and an icy authority. She walked with a purpose and a power that commanded the silent, absolute attention of everyone in the room. The executives rose to greet her in a gesture of profound deference. "Ms. Thorne," Ethan said, his voice filled with respect as he pulled out the chair at the head of the table for her. Marcus stared, his brain short-circuiting. Thorne. The name echoed in his mind, a name whispered in business circles with a mixture of awe and fear. Thorne was the phantom CEO of Starlight, the brilliant, solitary genius who had built the company from nothing. No one had ever seen her. There were no public photos, but he was seeing her now, and she was Eve, his wife. She sat down, her cold gray eyes locking onto his. The gentle, loving gaze he remembered was gone, replaced by the dispassionate stare of a predator assessing its prey. "Hello, Marcus," Evelyn Thorne said, her voice echoing in the cavernous silence of the boardroom. It was her voice, but it had a resonance of power he had never heard before. Marcus's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. His mind was a maelstrom of confusion and terror. The freelance designer, the simple domestic wife, the woman he pitied. It was all a lie, a complete, masterful deception. "I believe you're familiar with my work," she continued, gesturing vaguely to the room. "This is Starlight, my company. Project Apollo is my project. The building you're standing in is my building. The apartment you were evicted from, I own that too." She let the words hang in the air, each one a hammer blow against his shattered reality. "You told your friends I was simple," she said, her voice dangerously quiet. "That I wasn't equipped for the real world. You talked about ambition, about needing a partner who could keep up. You wanted a ticket to the top." She leaned forward slightly, her gaze pinning him to his chair. "Marcus, you were sleeping next to the top. You just weren't smart enough to realize it." A strangled, choked sound escaped his lips. The room was spinning. "You were worried about passion killers?" she continued, her voice devoid of any emotion save a chilling coolness. "Let me tell you what truly kills passion. It's not a conversation about a nursery color. It's contempt. It's betrayal. It's the profound disrespect of a man who mocks the mother of his child behind her back while planning to discard her like a piece of garbage." She paused, then stood, and the entire board remained seated, their eyes fixed on her. She walked slowly around the table until she stood directly behind him. He could feel the heat of her presence, a terrifying parody of their former intimacy. "You wanted to know why your life fell apart?" she whispered, her voice right next to his ear. "It wasn't bad luck. It wasn't a corporate matter. It was me. I took your credit. I took your house. I took your career. And I took your reputation. I did it all without raising my voice, without sending a single angry text. I did it with a few phone calls from the little hobby room you so generously permitted me." She walked back to the head of the table. "This is the real world, Marcus. And in this world, actions have consequences. You have no money, no career, and no future in this city. You are nothing." She placed a hand over her stomach. "As for this child," she said, her voice softening for a moment before hardening again to pure steel. "You will have no part in their life. You will not see them. You will not know them. My lawyers will be in touch regarding the formal termination of your parental rights, which I expect you to sign uncontested. You are not a father. You are only a lesson my child will one day learn." She looked at Ethan. "Ethan, please have security escort Mr. Kent out of my building. He is no longer welcome here." Marcus finally found his voice, a pathetic, broken stammer. "Eve, please, I didn't know. I'm sorry. I love you." Evelyn Thorne looked at him one last time, and for a fraction of a second, he saw a flash of the woman he married, a glint of hurt and loss. But it was gone as quickly as it came, replaced by the relentless resolve of a queen. "No, Marcus," she said with absolute certainty. "You didn't love me. You loved what you thought was my weakness, and my name," she added, turning her back to him. "Is Evelyn Thorne?" Security guards appeared at his side, gently but firmly lifting him from the chair. As they escorted him out of the room, the last thing he saw was the back of his wife, the powerful CEO, looking out over the city she owned without a single glance in his direction. He hadn't just lost a wife. He had been completely and utterly erased. A meaningful conclusion. Building a new empire. The months following the unveiling were a period of quiet, focused rebuilding for Evelyn. The storm had passed, the war was won, and now it was time to build the peace. Marcus Kent faded into obscurity, stripped of his name, his career, and his dignity. He left the city. Rumor had it he moved back to his hometown, working a dead-end job, a ghost of the ambitious man he once pretended to be. He signed away his parental rights without a fight. He knew he had no other option. He was a non-entity, a footnote in a story that was no longer about him. Evelyn, however, flourished. Embracing her identity as Evelyn Thorne once more, she emerged from her self-imposed public exile. The business world was stunned by the revelation of the face behind Starlight. She gave one, and only one, interview to the Financial Times, the same publication that had printed Marcus's social obituary. She didn't mention her marriage or Marcus. Instead, she spoke with brilliance and passion about the future of technology, about ethical corporate governance, and about her vision for Starlight. She announced a new philanthropic endeavor, born from the ashes of her personal pain. The Thorne Foundation for Single Parents, a charity dedicated to providing financial, educational, and emotional support to single mothers and fathers, giving them the resources to build secure futures for their children. She became an icon, not just for her business acumen, but for her quiet strength. She was the woman who had built an empire in secret, a testament to the power of underestimated women everywhere. 2 months later, she gave birth to a healthy baby girl, whom she named Sophia. Holding her daughter in the quiet of the hospital room, looking at her small, trusting face, Evelyn felt a sense of peace that revenge had never provided. The vengeance had been a necessary act of cleansing, of reclaiming her power and protecting her future. It was the closing of a painful chapter, but Sophia was the beginning of a new book, one filled with hope and unconditional love. Her life was no longer divided. She was a mother and a CEO. She brought Sophia to the office. The baby slept soundly in a bassinet in the corner of her sprawling office while she presided over board meetings. She negotiated multi-billion-dollar deals on the phone while rocking her daughter with her foot. She proved that a woman's power was not a zero-sum game. Her strength as a mother fueled her wisdom as a leader, and her decisiveness in business made her a fiercely protective parent. Ethan Bellwether became a doting grandfather figure to Sophia, often seen bouncing the baby on his knee while discussing quarterly projections with Evelyn. The cold, sterile penthouse transformed into a warm, loving home, filled with laughter and baby toys alongside stock reports. Evelyn had sought simplicity and found betrayal. She was forced to reclaim her power, and in doing so, she found a newer, more authentic version of herself. She learned that she didn't need to hide one part of her identity to nurture another. She could be Evelyn Thorne, the titan of industry, and she could be Eve, Sophia's mother. They were one and the same. Looking out over the vast office window one evening, with Sophia sleeping soundly in her arms, Evelyn Thorne contemplated the sparkling lights of the city. It was her kingdom, but her empire was no longer just the glass and steel towers of Starlight. It was the small, warm weight in her arms, the steady beat of her daughter's heart against hers. She had faced the ultimate betrayal, and had not only survived, but had built a better, stronger world from the ruins. And in that new world, she and her daughter were safe. They were powerful, and they were free. That is the incredible story of Evelyn Thorne. It is a story of devastating betrayal, but more importantly, it is a powerful reminder that your worth should never be determined by the opinions of others. Marcus only saw a simple, boring wife, but the queen standing before him blinded him. If you enjoyed this epic tale of corporate revenge, don't forget to subscribe for more stories of justice served cold. And please, drop your thoughts on Evelyn's final move in the comments below. What was the most satisfying moment for you?